Hi, I'm Jen. I said these words a lot growing up. My father worked for the government, and we moved every 2 years on average. That has the potential to be really traumatizing for a kid. Saying goodbye to friends, starting a new school, figuring out over and over again how to fit in. But my parents gave me the gift of mindset around our lifestyle. Every time my dad would have a new assignment, they would sit me down and say, "Jennifer, we're going on an adventure." And we did. Every new chapter presented an opportunity for adventure. We hiked up Mount Fuji for my 14th birthday. I spent a summer solstice eating a rock cake at the base of Stonehenge. Once we drove across the southern United States, and I watched in horror as my dad tried to eat one of those 72-ounce giant steaks in Texas. If you can eat the whole thing, it's free. I don't know how much it costs, but I know that it didn't end up being free. I learned to turn the page and be excited about the next chapter. I became comfortable with introducing myself to new people, and I embraced the art of the fresh start. That time in 4th grade when I missed the ball playing kickball and I fell tuchus over tea kettle and showed the whole school my panties. The kids in my new school didn't know that. Nothing could hold me back from greatness. Growing up in all sorts of remote places, moving frequently and collecting adventures meant that I grew to be very close with my parents, especially my dad. My dad was a storyteller. At least half of his stories ended in a bar fight, but nobody's perfect. Throughout my childhood, I'd listen to his stories, captivated by them, asking to hear favorite ones again and again, and delighting whenever a new one entered the mix. I believed with my whole heart that the key to a rich and full life was measured by your stories. And I vowed that I would spend my life cultivating a bursting at the seams book of adventures that I could share with my children. Over the years, I walked intentionally in that endeavor. Some of my stories are big. There was the time that I rode in an F-16 fighter jet, and I threatened to throw up all over the inside of it if that pilot did even one more loop-de-loop. Some of them were a product of making adventure out of circumstance. The time I jumped off a cliff into the Bering Sea in Alaska for a polar bear plunge. Out of the box? Yes. But really, it was because I was living on a tiny island in the Aleutian chain, and we had to entertain ourselves somehow. And some of them, maybe even the best of them, are the stories that shaped the fabric of who I am. When I was 18, I ran off and got married. I was so grown up, and I knew everything. I was the embodiment of good decisions. I had been married for all of 2.5 weeks to my now ex-husband. When Christmas came, we were living in a tiny little apartment outside of an Army base in Alabama. Our rent was $325 a month, and we had a 1-foot Christmas tree sitting on top of the baker's rack my mother had given me when I moved out, along with all of the other furniture she no longer wanted. We were broke, y'all. Broke. So under that little tree were a few carefully wrapped presents that I'd hoped would be impressive due to their wrapping, because under the paper they were humble. My parents drove up to spend the weekend with us, their first time in my big girl apartment with my so grown-up life. When my dad came through the door with a black garbage bag filled with presents, I couldn't have been more excited than if he'd been Santa himself. Presents. Things. I missed things. We arranged them all on the bottom of the baker's rack. That's technically under the tree. And I went to bed that night, just as I had in my childhood, anxiously awaiting a reasonable hour to appear on the bedside clock so that I could jump out of bed and open presents with the people I loved. I arranged the piles carefully in the morning, according to recipient, and when we were ready to begin, my ex-husband gave me his present first. He wanted me to open it right away. It was a tiny box, and I ripped the paper off to reveal one of those velvet hinged boxes. You know the kind. We all know the kind. Something sparkly was going to be in it, and I couldn't get the paper off fast enough. I lifted the top, and there they were. The teeniest, tiniest, barely a speck of dust. Diamond earrings! Diamond earrings! Oh, the scene I made. I jumped up, trying to get them into my ears as fast as I could, and I ran to each person in the room to show off my diamond earrings. Those baby little earrings. I knew how little money we had and how he must have saved for them. During my antics, I saw my father remove a present from my pile inconspicuously. I immediately turned my head to him, and he said, "This one's for your grandmother. It must have gotten mixed up when your mom mailed her presents." Seems fine. Look at my earrings, Daddy. 9 months later, my father died. I was 19, and he was my best friend. As my mom and I danced the weird waltz of grief in those early days, we were in their bedroom, looking through his jewelry box for the things we wanted to set aside before we invited his siblings to come in and choose their own keepsakes. And in the bottom of his armoire, I saw a familiar wrapped package. But it didn't have my grandmother's name on it. It had mine. I looked at my mom with it in my hands. What? She stopped what she was doing and she said, "You can open that." So I did. Carefully and deliberately, I unwrapped the last present that I would ever receive from my father. The paper came off. The box was velvet, hinged. My breath caught in my throat a little as I lifted the lid. 1 carat diamond earrings. He was so excited to give those to you. He picked them out himself and brought them home without any input from me. In that moment, I was broken apart and reformed in the image of a man who had just watched his only child step out of the nest that he had provided her and step into the next chapter. He had stepped into the shadows and allowed someone else to stand in my spotlight because my dad was the pinnacle of loving someone more than you love yourself. That Christmas morning, he knew that moment was my story. And here, in his bedroom, hollowed out by grief, he gave me the gift of one final story of his. My father was a giant among men. He guided me through his stories. But the lessons he taught me with his actions are what shaped me. I clothe myself in the fabric of my experiences every single day. I learned to be adaptable, to reinvent myself when I needed to step into the unknown and challenge the world to provide an adventure. I learned resiliency and strength, humor and gratitude. Every story, every adventure, they're all the pieces of me coming together in this amazing bursting at the seams book that I'm writing. I'm always ready to start the next chapter. Hi, I'm Jenn.